The moment DeWanna Bonner walked into the arena against the Indiana Fever, the temperature shifted instantly, not because of her presence on the court, but because of the chorus of boos raining down from Fever fans who had been waiting for this exact opportunity. It wasn't a casual jeer, not a light-hearted tease. It was venomous, cathartic, almost ceremonial. These fans had circled this date on their calendars the way you circle a high school reunion where your ex is showing up. And they came prepared to unleash every bit of pent-up frustration they'd been holding since Bonner's controversial departure. The boos weren't just about basketball. They were about betrayal, about how she left, about what it symbolized. They were about broken trust, about the feeling that a leader who had been anointed with faith and resources had abandoned them mid-season. And as Bonner stepped onto the hardwood, smiling faintly, maybe even pretending the noise didn't bother her, the fans of Indiana treated her like a villain returning to the scene of the crime. From the opening second she touched the ball, it wasn't just sport anymore. It was theater, the kind of theater that merges entertainment and pain. And that's where Kahleah Copper's confusion came in. Standing on the court, Copper looked around like a tourist dropped into a civil war, wondering why the landmines were exploding around her. She couldn't process the intensity of the moment, couldn't fathom why people who once cheered Bonner as a pioneer, as a record setter, were now unloading on her with boos that rattled the rafters. To Copper, this was distasteful. To Indiana, it was justice. That gap between perception and reality was the heart of the night. Because Copper, loyal teammate, fierce competitor, was operating on basketball logic. She saw Bonner as a legend, a veteran, someone who had built credibility and should be respected no matter what. But Fever fans weren't following basketball logic. They were following fan logic, the messy, emotional, irrational current that drives sports in ways no player can fully predict. To the Fever faithful, this wasn't DeWanna Bonner the player. This was DeWanna Bonner the defector, the opportunist, the one who cashed checks, quit on the season, and walked away without explanation. This was the woman who, in their eyes, left a wound that never healed. And fans don't boo box scores. They boo ghosts, they boo memories, they boo betrayal. That's why the arena shook with disapproval. And yet Copper, standing at the podium afterward, didn't get it. She looked into the cameras with genuine bewilderment and said she thought the crowd's behavior was unnecessary, disrespectful, beyond the line. She described Bonner as sweet, kind, a league legend who deserved admiration instead of ridicule. What Copper didn't understand was that this wasn't about whether Bonner was nice or whether she'd contributed to the WNBA's growth. It was about how she left Indiana hanging in the balance, about how she forced her way into a situation that suited her while leaving an organization to pick up the pieces. It was about how she smiled through it all as if nothing happened. To fans, that smile wasn't kindness, it was audacity. It was gasoline on the fire. And if Copper thought she could talk the fans out of that fire, she was mistaken. Because fandom isn't rational. It doesn't care about nuance or context. It cares about wounds and whether they scab over, and Bonner's never did. The boos were inevitable, the moment preordained, and Copper stepping in to defend Bonner only poured more accelerant on the flames. Her statements were like walking into a breakup brunch and telling your friend's ex, "Hey, he's not so bad." Wrong time, wrong place, wrong message. Fever fans weren't looking for moral lectures, they were looking for vindication. Every jeer, every insult hurled Bonner's way was part of their healing process. It was therapy in the form of noise. And when Copper dismissed it, she dismissed the very real emotions that had been festering for months. But let's backtrack, because Bonner's exit didn't just happen in a vacuum. This wasn't your standard free agency move or a quiet trade. This was a soap opera. Bonner signed for big money, played uninspired basketball, then stopped showing up entirely when things got tough. She didn't just walk away. She weaponized her absence, refusing to play, refusing to compromise, refusing to give the franchise or its fans any closure. And then, after orchestrating her own path to exactly where she wanted to be, without regard for the collateral damage left behind, she returned to Indiana with that same air of calm confidence that once made her beloved. Except now, instead of admiration, it was met with contempt. That's why fans booed her as if she'd stolen from their personal bank accounts. To them, she did. She robbed them of a season, of hope, of faith in their franchise. And now she was back. The aftermath of DeWanna Bonner's return game didn't end with the final buzzer. It erupted in the press conferences, social media threads, and barbershop debates that followed. Because while the Fever celebrated a victory and their fans celebrated a night of cathartic booing, the real theatre came when Copper doubled down on her remarks, defending Bonner as if she were shielding royalty from an unruly mob. That's where this saga shifted from basketball story to cultural moment, because now it wasn't just about what happened on the court, it was about what fans are allowed to do, what loyalty means, and how professional athletes interpret criticism. Copper's words framed Fever fans as cruel and distasteful, but the problem with that narrative is simple. Sports are built on reactions, and booing is the most primal of all. The minute you step into an arena, you're stepping into a contract where love can flip to hate in the blink of an eye. Fans cheer because they care. They boo because they care even more, because the betrayal cuts deeper than indifference ever could. Bonner's situation is proof. If she had been irrelevant, no one would have booed. The sound would have been silence, and silence is far more damning. Instead, the fans filled the rafters with noise, reminding her that she mattered once, and still matters now, even if it's as the villain. And villains, as every great sports drama shows us, are essential. Yet Copper's framing painted the Fever faithful as out of line, as though booing Bonner was an attack on her character instead of an expression of their own heartbreak. But to compare booing to disrespect is to misunderstand the language of fandom entirely. Sports have always had a ritualistic element. Fans dress in team colors, chant in unison, throw their hands up on free throws, scream on third downs. Booing is part of that ritual, a way of saying, "We remember what you did, and we won't let you off the hook." It's a release valve for pain, not a calculated attack. To deny fans that is to deny them their part in the game. What Copper called distasteful was in fact the most honest and authentic reaction those fans could muster. They weren't being cruel, they were being honest. And if anything, honesty is the purest form of respect a fan base can give, because it means they still care enough to feel. Consider how the saga unfolded over the past year. Bonner didn't just leave. She quit mid-season, pocketing her contract, rejecting trades, refusing to compromise, all while giving no explanation beyond the implication that Indiana was not good enough for her. That kind of departure leaves scars. It makes fans feel disposable, like their loyalty was one-sided, like they were cheering for someone who had no intention of returning that energy. That's not something you can sweep under the rug with highlight reels or press releases. That's something that festers until the moment she walks back into their building. And that moment finally came. The boos were never about her stat line, which for the record was abysmal, just 2 points on free throws, a forgettable performance that only heightened the schadenfreude in the arena. The boos were about the symbolism. Bonner walking back into Gainbridge Fieldhouse was like an ex showing up at your family reunion, pretending the breakup never happened, expecting hugs instead of hard stares. And Indiana, being Indiana, wasn't about to play nice. They handed her the coldest embrace they could muster, and they did it with passion. That's sports. It's messy, it's emotional, it's irrational, and it's real. Now let's address the Alyssa Thomas angle, because that subplot adds gasoline to an already raging fire. Thomas, Bonner's spouse, has long been one of the most vocal critics of the Fever, publicly dismissing their struggles, mocking their relevance, and treating them like a cautionary tale. For her partner to then force her way onto that very team created a sense of cosmic irony. To Fever fans, it looked less like a coincidence and more like a coordinated play, a power grab wrapped in matrimony. Imagine being a Fever fan, hearing Thomas clown your team one season, only to watch your front office bend over backwards to appease Bonner the next. It's not paranoia to feel slighted, it's common sense. And sports fans, while often irrational, are never blind. They connect dots, they craft narratives, they hold grudges. That's what keeps sports alive during the off-season. They don't forget, and they certainly didn't forget here. So when Copper painted the booing as cruelty, she erased all of that context, all of that history, reducing a complex story of betrayal, loyalty, and power to something as shallow as disrespect. And that's why her comments landed so poorly. They weren't just tone-deaf, they were dismissive. They told the Fever fans their feelings didn't matter, their loyalty was meaningless, and their heartbreak was invalid. And no fan base anywhere in any sport, I